It's 2026. It's our first episode of Season 5, Episode 94. We've got a lot of things to talk about before we get to our guest today. More importantly, if you like the podcast, please subscribe to us on YouTube. We are now on Instagram and TikTok as well. We're now on all medium, and I've just noticed that our Google search numbers are just going through the roof, so it definitely makes an impact. You can indulge in our entire library of past episodes at johnstation.com. Right. I thought we'd share some 2025 numbers. Are you ready for this, Ali? We call this everyone's doing the unwrapped. Ours is obviously the unwrapped. We're about a week late, but let's do it anyway. Of course, we know from Spotify, our number one show. What was that, Ali?
Our number one show for 2025, it was likely the one we did on football.
Unfortunately, that is incorrect. It's Yako's. He was number one, Rising from the Ashes on September 20th. That was played 215% more than any other episode. That was our number one show on Spotify. But according to our back-end platform, what was our number one show? Take a guess. It had 7,238 downloads. It was not Yako.
Oh.
It is Danny Lynn's, the last one we just did.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. That
was a good one.
TikTok Shop, so that got over 7,000 downloads. That's our number one show.
Something to do with the fact that you've also produced a couple of TikTok videos around it, and that's what's driving a lot of the...
Yeah, that 500 views that we got on our combined TikTok videos really upped those numbers. Maybe, let's think so. Or maybe it's just a provocative topic. Overall, Spotify said that our total audience increased 102% in 2025. Our followers increased 29%. We're on 43 countries. Hopefully 2026 will be productive and if fruitful. We've got 450,000 downloads overall from the history of our podcast. Hopefully hit that 500,000 pretty soon.
That's 100,000 a year.
So let's get on to this big discussion that we're going to talk about today, and that you can hear the train going by where I live. So
yeah, that's amazing.
That's something I can't get rid of. I'll take that out.
That's
I
awesome.
live right next to the Amtrak train. Yeah, he's coming right now.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. It reminds me of the Johnny Cash song.
Yeah. No, it's louder than shit, too.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's perplexed us, and oftentimes we see in the news, we see on all sorts of podcasts talking about how much Asia has leapfrogged the West. And it's really quite an interesting topic. We thought we'd talk about it today. We're now faced with a new resurgence of cultural convergence. This is a term that scholar Henry Jenkins coined back in 2007 with the iPhone launch, about how cultures actually converge, and they're not necessarily separate, but converging. And this cultural convergence was once considered one way from the West and to the rest of the world, but now we're seeing a lot of it come from Asia. For the last decade, there's been a growing narrative in marketing and technology that Asia has leapfrogged the West, and it's just not in platforms. We've seen payments and commerce. China, Southeast Asia, and parts of India have built integrated ecosystems where much of the West still remains fragmented. It would seem that Asia has indeed leapfrogged the West, or has it? Why haven't we seen more global dominant, cultural, powerful brands emerging from Asia? Most of the brands, the top brands in the world, they're still coming from the United States. Or are we still using a very Western 20th century definition of what a great brand actually is? Does longevity equal brand greatness in a platform-driven, AI-enabled world? Well, to discuss this leapfrog paradox today, we're joined by my good friend Krishnan Menon, a marketing and customer experience leader with more than 26 years of client-facing experience across Asia Pacific and global markets. He's a person who has spent much of his career helping Western organizations operate in Asian markets. Krishnan has held a lot of senior leadership roles, including president of experience at APAC at Ogilvy, chief client officer at Merkle, and of course my favorite, and yes, Krishnan, I'm wearing the sweatshirt today in your honor, chief client and growth officer at what I call Wonderman, not Wonderman Thompson, at APAC, and most recently he was APAC Managing Director for RGA. Krishnan is now a distinguished fellow at the Nanyang Center for Marketing and Technology at the Nanyang Business School in Singapore. Krishnan, welcome to Shanghai Zan.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Hi, Bryce. Hi, Ali. Nice topic as well. Yeah, it's exciting. I haven't seen Bryce for a while, especially since he became Professor Bryce. So yeah, looking forward to it. Just like old times.
Still the same Bryce, just like 5 kilos heavier. So, Krishnan, just get to the first question and open it up there for the discussion. There's a popular belief in the media that Asia has now leapfrogged the West in marketing, commerce, customer experience. Given from your vantage point, do you agree with this? Is it an accurate statement, or where
It
is it the most
is.
obvious?
Mostly, but I think it's not confined to what we're talking about, right? Asia has always leapfrogged in tech. And when I say tech, I don't mean tech as we see it. It's all technology, right? And that's mostly because of the slow rate of progress in the last, I don't know, last half century in Asia or in the run up to the millennium, right? So, for instance, let's take something as basic as a telephone. In China and India, they never went through that process of every household getting a landline, because by the time landlines were catching up in these big countries, cell phones were big. So everyone just made the leap from having no device to having a mobile phone, right? Because they didn't need to go through that journey of doing landlines and stuff like that. So I think it's the same sort of thing, just like it's happened in automotive. And like you guys remember, I mean, China went from, and I'm being very simplistic and generalizing, but went from bicycles to the best cars. Didn't go through that whole journey of that the West went through. So in that sense, yes, leapfrog, yes, but it's also because big behemoths in Asia have created these joined up flows, right? So you have every stage of the journey becoming a full funnel. You've got like the super apps and social commerce and things like that. So because innovation is what is leapfrogging, you've had the ability of things where the rubber meets the road, like commerce and CX and stuff like that. You see it. It's not that it doesn't happen everywhere. It's happening everywhere in all parts of industry and business, but you see it the most in the bit that touches us as consumers. So we say, oh yeah, it's, leapfrogging the West in marketing and commerce and stuff. But it is mostly leapfrogging everywhere. It's just we don't see it as much.
Do you
Interesting
think it
point.
has to do with to the culture of Asia? Like there's not, there's a lot more or maybe this is just an observation that I have. There's a lot more acceptance and receptivity to newness and new things. I
Is
think
it
maybe
that or is it impatience?
it
Like
has
people want things quickly.
yeah, but it's rooted, I think, in this in this culture of come from, they're very humble cultures as well, and they're very humble societies, and they're not very wealthy, or they don't historically have a lot of wealth. Newness, getting a new television set, and going from, what was it, CDs to VCDs to DVDs, that's just part of the culture. They don't have the 100 years of heirloom kind of products, or household appliances that have been passed down generation to generation. So they've gone from, it's part of their culture because they haven't had, and so the need
Yes.
to kind of change. I think it's rooted somewhere in there. Sorry, I'm not expressing myself really well, but I think it's something.
No, so I think I know where you're going with that. And I actually completely agree that someone who's going to get their first mobile phone today is not going to turn around and say, I'm going to buy, uh,
Radio transistor.
yeah, I'm not gonna buy a Nokia 3310 and work my way up to the most modern phone. I'm gonna get the newest phone, right? And that'll be my first device. So, and that's fair enough. But I also think that half the problem is because Asia as a culture, we're running fast culture. It's not like I was in Peru recently, right? And there was one thing that really stood out for me. All over the country, and we were in a train going across the country, and you see homes under construction. They look like homes under construction. Everywhere you look, air brick, unfinished buildings with girded with rebar sticking out of the top, stuff like that, but they're all occupied, right? And so I finally asked a couple of people why that was. And it turns out that when a family finally gets a plot of land, they dig a foundation enough for at least 5 or 6 floors of building, right? But they build the first floor which is where they live. Because as they move along generation, they get more wealthy and they can afford to build another floor. They will build another floor slowly while living there, and then generations move upstairs and upstairs and upstairs. But the foresight of that and the ability to say, I'm okay to grow slow, right? I'm okay with that because progress will come, wealth will come. But I think in most Asian cultures, young people, and I think this comes from some parts of Asia being fairly young at the moment, and the exuberance of youth and the wanting to hit wealth quickly and, upgrade and get there quickly. And so brands or products that require a long gestation period don't survive because people don't have the patience for it. So it's those two things, I think, what you were saying about innovation being forefront and people having that energy to innovate, also because of, I guess, a younger population, and not having exposure to baggage. So having an old beat up car that you've had for 20 years could also be baggage, right? It could also give you a foundation to move to newer things, but it could also be baggage. If the first car you own is a Zeekr EV from China, then that's all you know. For you is you get in and it's all screen and stuff like that. But some of us don't like that sort of thing. So, but we're the generation that's dying out. And so I think it's that and the fact that people have no patience to wait for anything. You talked about music. I've recently become obsessed with wanting the tactile part of listening to music. So I've got all of the old cassettes out. I got myself a cassette player and a CD player. It's still hi-fi. It's a TAC CD player and a cassette deck, but it's cutting edge. It can copy onto USB and it can do all the things. It can rip from Spotify directly to a tape and whatever. But it's
Actually quite nice.
it is really nice. And so I've only had it. I finally found it, like, I think about a week and
How
a
many
half
tapes do
ago.
you have?
Right now, collecting from cousins and this and that, I've got about 105, but I've just been promised on WhatsApp 2,000 of them. So I'm waiting for that. But the beauty of it is, and one of my cousins sent me an article about slow listening and the joy of putting your phone away, putting a tactile something into it, and then sitting down in front of that and listening to the music and actually being in the moment. And it's not music playing in the background while you're doing something else, right? Whereas my daughter in another room is sitting in front of the television with her computer, her phone, and her tablet
Running
all
at the
around
same
her,
time. Mm.
right? It's a generational thing.
I guess this gets back to the question then is if Asia's evolving in a different way, much quicker way, is this the reason that we haven't seen the advent of major brands from Asia? But I mean, at the same time, if you look at major brands that are from the West, we're looking at brands which didn't exist 25 years ago. Google didn't exist. Apple did, but it certainly isn't the juggernaut that it is now. So most of the brands now that lead the world in terms of if we look at the ranking of brands are global technology brands.
But those are not new brands, right? So even 25 years is a long time. So I think, and this brings me back to that word leapfrogged. I think it's used in a kind of blanket sense. It's used to define the experience or the usage of a product or the experience of or it being efficient, but it's not about what it feels like. The intangible is where Asia doesn't leapfrog because brands, there's no shortcut. It takes time to build a brand. You've got to embed yourself in. I mean, I'm preaching to the converted here, but it takes a lot of effort to build a brand. And if we go back to the earlier thing of impatience and innovation and everything needs to be keep changing, you can't build a brand like that. You can't do new livery on your airline every year and expect people to remember who you are. You can't, right? And so Google and Apple, I mean, Apple especially, right? They've been so dogged in the way they look and feel and behave and produce products and all of that, built that brand. So no matter how many other local Asian phones look like an iPhone or their dealership looks like, or their outlet looks like an Apple store and stuff like that, they still don't have that brand that Apple has because Apple's put the time in to build it, right?
And why has that has that time to build a brand evaded most Asian brands? Why haven't they seen this? I mean, certainly some have. I mean, certainly Samsung is a global brand.
Yeah.
From the in terms of leadership, they're still behind, despite the fact that they've seen the model of building a brand for many years, but still haven't been able to despite all the resources and the markets, they still haven't been able to reach the level of some of the global brands.
Maybe we haven't given it time enough. Like we're ignoring Japan a little bit, right? Like the number of global brands that have come out of there, not to be scoffed at, right? Like that are still huge global brands. But both Japan and Korea, where Samsung and Sony and Honda and all of those come from, are actually almost Western markets. Like you wouldn't consider them in the same breath because I think, again, they've had the time. So if you look at brands that are coming out of India, China, maybe 10 years from now, they will be strong brands because some of them have got the message and they've stayed true and they've deliberately built that brand value, brand preference, differentiation. Honestly, I think the thing that's killing brands is the lack of differentiation. It's not anything else. It's the urge to, that guy's got that in his brand. I need that as well. Like WeChat does payments using a new colored QR. I need to have that too. Suddenly, everyone has everything, and there's nothing to differentiate you from someone else. So you have to have differentiation for your brand to stand out.
Yes.
Mm, I recently saw Royal Enfield, right? You guys know what Royal Enfield
Yeah,
is?
the
Yeah.
motorcycle brand, of
Yeah.
course.
For the first time this year, I mean 2025, in the world top motorbikes, Royal Enfield had two of them in the top 10, right? Which is quite amazing. I mean, this is a little shop. I worked on Royal Enfield 20 years ago in Chennai, and it was one little factory, and the company was about to be shut down when this young guy, his father gave him some money to invest. He came back from Yale Business School, and he went to Chennai and he bought Royal Enfield. And he worked for 20 years to build that brand into what it is today. And he's actually built the brand, not just the products. Of course, the products are better and all of that. But today, it's selling all over the world. People actually know that brand for what it is. Heck, it was in the Harry Potter movie, right? Like, I mean, Hagrid's motorbike was a Royal Enfield,
That's true. Do you
right?
think so? I mean, do you think now with you mentioned differentiation, lack of it, and are we falling into that trap with the use of AI that and the fact that brands are not really building brands anywhere? I mean, some of the things that you mentioned about time and taking the time and building the brand, we're seeing essentially because of media placement and technology and performance marketing, we've seen a kind of an about face of that overall, and that really no one's taking the time to build brands anymore. I mean, you're still optimistic that some of these Asian brands will slowly evolve, or are they just falling into more of the trap of sameness because they're just being hooked on generative AI and saving costs, and they want the same thing that they've done many times before?
I think with most of the smaller brands, that's happening. And that's not just Asian brands, right? It's everywhere. Even the global brands, everyone's falling prey to this thing. And what like performance marketing and sales and all of that builds behavioral power. It's habit. It's people are buying stuff that works for them. They like the product, they're buying more of it. But brand gives you cultural power. It gives you that cachet to say something, do something that's out of the ordinary. Now, cultural transformation happens from the edges, right? We know this. It happens from the fringes. But the habit is built in the middle because it's people in the sea of sameness. So because of generative AI, as that sea of sameness gets wider and wider and wider, there's no room for that innovation anymore. There's no room for those edges. And that's when you lose it. You lose the ability to build that cultural transformation, that cultural power that a brand would give you because everything is the same. And I think most brands, most companies today are confusing sales growth for brand growth. Again, and Bryce, you've heard me say this 100 times. There's only two metrics that matter, right? Sales and NPS. Will you buy and will you tell friends and family to buy? The first one is evidence that you've got a good product. and it's something that works and something that people identify with. But to get the second one, the person has to feel like they belong. And that comes from brand. That comes from people wanting to say proudly, hey, I use this. I always stay at the Marriott, or I always stay at Como, right? Now, there's a great Asian brand, right? Como. I mean, whether you go to Bhutan or you go to Bali or you go to Turks and Caicos, the experience is still brilliant and it's still uniquely Como, right? So you have to feel like you belong to the brand to recommend it.
Mm.
And so I think it's important that brands understand which metric they want to watch and how much attention they pay to it. And that sadly seems to be going away from the boardroom because of the pressures of the street. It is more and more boardrooms are focusing on the or just one half of growth.
I was thinking about another. I don't want to call it metric, but we'll just call it metric for this conversation. But like you mentioned, Krishnan, that it takes time for brands to grow. And I think this is related to what you've said, but I'm just going to look at what you've said and the argument that you put forward from a different lens. We also see, it's just the consumer behavior is obviously very different. The way they consume content and the way they're, the channels and the environments that they're exposed to and advertising are very different. When we look at it from this metric of time, like one of the things that I've always said is that, within a 24-hour time frame, half of that time is sleeping. And so you're really not exposed to any advertising. Then you have another 12 hours left. And within those 12 hours, you're only exposed to media for, I don't know, a few minutes of a day, right? If you really, really think about what it is that you do on your device. And within those few minutes, for the many, many brands that exist to crack into someone's life and really kind of connect with them in whatever way, whether it's an exposure, it's very difficult to build a brand within that mini second. So I mean that like there's that, there's that's happening. But the other thing is also like, it's this debate over from between want and need. And I feel that this younger consumers an argument, but I feel like when they're exposed to product within, let's say, a TikTok environment or an Insta environment, it's it's legacy or heritage or all of that's kind of translated into the beautiful product, great content. I like I see that a lot of people have said good things about it. The price is right, I'm gonna buy. And so I'm referring to social commerce, but a lot of what the tools, the time, the environment to quote unquote build brand is just that real estate within a phone and a social media platform for a split second. And so you could almost argue that maybe brands, maybe the definition of brand, what you said, Bryce, earlier, we need to change it. It's longevity doesn't exist anymore.
Your point is predicated on the assumption that you only build brand through advertising communications. Let's take your analogy, right? Someone saw a new shade of lipstick from a local brand, an Asian brand, on a TikTok thing, and they ordered it right there, right? Great. So that piece of communication has got you the sale. Then the product arrives in their house. When it arrives, suddenly it's not in a horrendous brown packaging that's an Amazon envelope wrapped with the brown tape and blah blah blah. None of that. It's a beautifully designed pack that is a designed for commerce pack where all the shipper needed to do was put a label on it and send the pack as it is, right? It arrived and you go, whoa, never seen that before. And then you crack it open like the Apple packaging. It has a simple tear off that lets you pop open the thing. The lipstick is in that safe and sound. You've taken it out, you've used it. So you've got one delight point already right there with the packaging. Then you've taken it out, you've used it the next morning. You went out, you spent the whole day there. It rained in the middle and you got caught, whatever. But you've gone about your day. You've come home at 6 o'clock. You're standing in front of your mirror and you're taken aback because your lipstick is intact. You've gone the whole day. You've never felt that before,
It happens
right?
to me all the time.
Yeah, but when that happens, you're going, hang on, you've got another big delight point there because that consumer has just realized that for most of the second half of the day, all the people she's interacted with, she's presented herself the way she wanted to present herself because, unbeknownst to her, her lipstick has stayed. I'm saying it's a small thing, right? But that's how brands are built, right? It is like it's you buying a new car and then having a small problem with it, and someone shows up at your house to sort it out for you, right? It's everything matters, right? So this RGA has a phenomenal. I really love it. It's this amazing format that they use. Right? It's a format to help build brands, right? Help brand strategy. What that is based on the concept that if you stand for something as a brand, is if your stated active purpose is something, every single part of your brand slash business slash product has to manifest that active purpose, right? Only then do you build a brand, right? And that's important. The word active is important. It can't be something on a wall. It has to be something that's an active purpose that every part, like POSB, which is the Post Office Savings Bank that's part of DBS in Singapore, right? They have their active purpose, or their tagline, which I'm assuming is their purpose, is neighbors first, bankers next, right? And then one morning I was waiting outside a POSB in one of the heartlands of Singapore, waiting for it to open. And at 8:55, it opens at it opens at 8:30. At 8:25, I'm standing there far away from the door. This old lady, quite infirm, hobbles up to the door. It's 5 minutes to open it, and the door's actually open, but the bank's not open yet. The security guard yelled at her and told her to get the fuck away and wait till 8:30 and then come. Mind you, there are chairs inside, right? That is one moment when he could have demonstrated how they were neighbors first. So the point is, it's not his fault. Neither is it the marketer's fault or anybody's fault. It's a cultural thing. If you're building a brand, every single part of your organization has to live that brand, right? And so I think it's that sort of stuff. And Bryce knows this. I don't know, must be a decade ago, we were launching Land Rover Evoque in China. The global brand positioning of Land Rover at that point was you don't have to be loud to be heard. It was about understated luxury. But in China, you have to be loud to be heard. Have you
Yeah,
seen
nobody
China?
understood that ad.
Yeah, nobody understood that ad. So
It was anti-American.
yeah, totally.
They was like in Las Vegas making noise, and then here comes the Evoque. It's calm British people, and it's like calming things down from the noisy Americans. Yeah, it was very discriminatory.
So these guys had to take it, and the campaign that ran in China for that particular brand was anime. It was so far away from what that was, but it stayed true to what the brand stood for, right? This understated luxury, and who buys it in China was different, but it still stayed true.
Yeah.
So all of that needs to happen. Who knows? A little brand from Asia going and launching in Western Europe probably needs a rethink for that particular market.
So
right?
you think that the challenge, therefore, is that it's not necessarily the communications per se, but all the things around it. It almost seems that what you just said is a very important point. Do you think that, therefore, one of the mistakes that Asian brands have outside of the Japanese brands, the Toyotas and the Samsungs, is that they don't have the patience or the detail for those type of experiences that you just mentioned? They're not going to invest in that because they're too focused on a short-term sale.
Going to the point of should we reconsider what the brand is? I don't think it's about reconsidering what a brand is. It's about understanding what a brand is, right? I don't think we've spent enough time, or the majority of brands that are born in Asia have spent the time to understand and pay the attention and the effort it takes. It's not easy, and it requires investment. And so would you rather do 1 million TikTok ads and grow your sales by 6,000%, or would you build a brand? I mean, right now, the answer is obvious. They're all doing the former, right? But 15 years from now, you may not exist. Maybe that's okay. Maybe they don't want to exist.
It's going back to what Ali mentioned. Maybe a brand isn't necessarily defined by longevity, and that any brand that goes through the correct motions, that integrates their experiences in every touch point, will see the benefits of being built, maybe in a sense quicker, because they've got mediums that can immediately connect with consumers faster than ever before. What do you think of the platforms? What's the platform's involvement in this?
There's one important thing that we should talk about when we talk about brands today, right? And that will link directly to platforms and cultures and stuff like that, which is that brands today, who decides what a brand is different. That's important to note. Consumer decides what your brand is. So the winners will be companies that are so plugged in to the consumer. Like that fundamental has not changed. In fact, it's become more important, I think, to be able to have your ear to the ground, know exactly the pulse of the consumer, of the populace, so that when you are produce a piece of communication, I mean, there've been such tone deaf crap we've seen in the world that you remember that Pepsi thing?
I mean, the Kendall Jenner ad where she stops, yeah, so she stops the protest. Yeah, that's a classic in academia. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that's classic disconnection. So I think that's important. This fundamental of understanding of consumer insight being one of the biggest things that govern your business is super critical. I think a lot of companies do this really well on the product side. Like the good organizations will never release a product that wouldn't work for the consumers. So why would you do that with your brand, right? So and I think the platforms that win are the platforms that will help you do this. Like I was hearing a couple of days ago about how the AI persona thing that research companies are doing, that's unbelievable. Like today, if you're Land Rover, your research agency will build you AI personas that are trained to essentially be representative of your target. And you can openly, just in natural language, ask the target questions constantly. So you can live test at the speed of thought, and you're not producing conversation, communication, putting it in link test, none of that, right? And so you're so plugged in with a virtual target consumer who's constantly trained on what the real consumer is doing. That's great use of generative AI. I think there are ways for platforms to help with it, to help with distinctiveness, differentiation, which I think we should use more as an industry.
Are there any brands that come to mind that you think exemplify that total experience, that they are hitting all the right buttons at every touch point? They are building the brand slowly. They're not rushing things to the extent that they're making sure that every experience is integrated within the brand experience. Can you think of any brands that are doing that effectively?
I think Mahindra, the automotive company in India, like they're pretty good. I was going to say Taj Hotels, which is owned by the Tatas, but that's unfair because they've been around for donkey's years. Like they've had so much time to invest into the brand that it's unfair to say that they're, one of them. But they're another example of all around great Asian brand that does it. I think the guys who actually make the desk I'm using, a company called OmniDesk in Singapore, they're really cool because all parts of their thing is engineered towards giving you a better experience with what you buy from them. Oh, I can't think of anything else that is new. Like, Singapore Airlines, they're a unique. We should talk about Singapore Airlines as a brand, right? Most brands, their problem is that their their product and experience doesn't live up to the brand story, right? SQ is the opposite. Their brand story and their investment in marketing and their brand storytelling doesn't live up to the product. And that comes from the kind of company they are. They're so obsessed with giving you a fantastic product on the ground and in the air that they believe that that's enough. That's also not enough. You have to be able to make sure that your website is brilliant and your app is brilliant. The experience, not sort of all the peripheral experiences, are also fantastic.
I think it's always interesting with that because I've gone through many live student projects where I assigned them brands, that we signed them clients and brands, and naturally the companies were really excited, not just because they were getting free ideas, but also because they're working with young people. And I think the students were really surprised at how poorly that some of the brand integration was not paid attention to on certain social media channels, that they actually did a deep dive analysis of what they did, and they found out to be, well, they didn't post enough, or they hadn't posted anything on Facebook for the last 3.5 months, or they were posting content repetitively across different channels, but the same post. I mean, they didn't really take into account the channel specifics. It's really amazing that despite these massive $1 million budgets and all that they're paying the agencies, that they fall short on something that's very basic, and a bunch of kids who, frankly, have been studying marketing and advertising for 2 to 3 years were able to recognize it. What do you think accounts for that?
Well, baggage. Most marketers, I think, are working for their boss and not for the brand. It's as simple as that. You're trying to produce something that will get approved. The agency is writing a film or a social media or a TikTok idea that will get approved by the marketing manager. And the marketing manager is trying to get the agency to write something that the marketing director will approve. No one really cares about what's good for the brand. They're all just trying to get something out the door that everyone signs up on. And we know what marketing by committee does.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the enormous amount of hypocrisy. Yeah.
Yeah. So if everyone actually focused, have you read the Netflix, their mission statement? Essentially, there's a bit that talks about everything you do needs to be focused on what's good for Netflix. The way you work with their team, the way you work with people, everything has to be focused on what's best for Netflix. Nothing else matters. I think that's a really cool way of doing it. Like most of the time we find people producing stuff, communications, especially agencies that are producing stuff that's completely disconnected with the consumer. In Nanyang Business School, every year for the last couple of years, I've done this thing where I do a live pitch, like you do as well, Bryce. I did one for KFC last year, and in 2024 actually, and it was to talk about, they're essentially to try and find out why young people aren't eating chicken anymore, right? Like, why aren't they going to KFC and ordering chicken on the bone? Right? They're eating tenders and this and that. Why aren't they ordering chicken on the bone? So we tried to dress up a brief, and there were 16 teams that came and presented and whatever. My favorite piece of insight that came out of that whole exercise, and that came from multiple teams. Well, there was lots of great stuff about, Labubu and, takeaways and the gifts and all that shit. But the best thing I liked was they said, yeah, chicken on the bone, not so much, because you can't eat chicken on the bone and hold your phone in one hand at the same time.
Damn right.
What a fucking insight, right? Because it is, if you look around every restaurant, kids want to be holding that. So if you wanted people to buy chicken on the bone, you need to make it boneless. You need to put it in a pouch that they can hold with one hand and eat, right? And that is a big product insight.
Or you come up with a KFC drone so that
Yes,
your phone
something.
can levitate while you eat.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a marketing idea that an agency would come up with to solve this problem, right? They'd be like, oh, we produce one thing. There'll be one guy in the whole city who will get that damn drone, right? Because of the price variance between the product and the price. But
I'm confident and Ali, now you're in Shanghai, you can go to a KFC and see this, where people will be eating chicken
I
on
love
bone
this.
and holding that damn phone. There's no question about
So
it.
I could come up based on that insight. I almost feel like going to Sora right now and coming up with different ideas, like even an exoskeleton with an extra limb that just feeds you, so you can just stay on the phone while you get fed by these tentacles that are around you. That'd be amazing. We're getting there, by the way. We're going to be there.
But this is typical of the three of us, right? We're three agency guys. We're coming up with ideas to solve a non-problem. We're coming up with, instead, we should be thinking, how can we make that product more consumable without the use of two hands? Because then you're raising volume. You're going to sell more. You're going to make them feel like they belong with KFC and all of that stuff. But we're like, oh, yeah, let's make a poster that they can scratch and snip. I mean, come on, like... you know what I mean, right? Like,
That's very funny. That's
I
great.
love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Krishnan, it's the first show of 2026. We give our first guest the opportunity to give us a prediction for 2026. What marketing predictions do you have for the new year?
Well, I think search The fragmentation of search will be it'll go through the roof. It started in 2025, which, with this thing of generative engine optimization being more important than search engine optimization, that'll become more and more, I think. And for that reason, like we said, Reddit, either brands being on Reddit, but that won't be trusted. To get people to talk about you on Reddit to teach the generative engine, you're going to have to live up to your promises. You're going to have to actually be good as a brand for people to start saying nice things about you, for the generative engine to love you. So it means differentiation becomes key. So it means that brands will need to get braver, need to live up to their values, tighter codes, right? And we'll see, as a result, fewer brands that portray themselves as for everyone, right? I really think that may not happen in 26, but it will happen. I think that's going to be an outcome of this. Brand voice will become a reality. Like, I think that's another great thing that generative AI has done. You'll start speaking as consumers directly to the brand. And as a result of all of this and the need for consumer insight to be at the center, brands will own demand generation themselves. I suspect that this thing of third-party platforms driving demand will be balanced by brands generating their own demand. So their own platforms will become much more important to that sales cycle, right? And creators. We should talk about people like yourselves, right? The creative economy, I think, will become more professional, and it'll be long-term connections. It'll be people who say Bryce and Ali manifest what we want to be as a brand. So they will be our partners for 2 years, right? Or 3 years or whatever, to help us build the brand. And it won't be, oh, I'm going to do the top 20 Wondery podcasts will get money from me. It won't be like that anymore. I think it'll be creators doing partnerships that are more meaningful and build the brand. Those are my predictions.
No, that's great. Nano influencers like ourselves definitely are going to be hot. Ali, any predictions for 2026? Krishnan had quite a long list there. I'm sure that you could add a few.
No, I like the ones that Krishnan shared, actually. It just happens to be that I think I might be moving over to work for an influencer SaaS operations company, creator, influence. So thank you. So that's a tick mark right there. And the other one on generative engine optimization, that's a conversation from yesterday. We need to, you and I, all three of us actually, we need to get as much content of ourselves out in the world so that LLMs pick up on and refer to us, because what's going to happen is the rest of the world, the world is just going to move towards just single interface, and we want to be referred to as much as possible. And the point that struck me the most is that our legacy is not going to be based on our memory, and legacy is going to be based on whether or not these AI products and platforms remember us and continue to quote us for a very long time. And we're of that age now where I think we still have the ability to talk. We're still relevant. We still, we're still kind of in touch. So let's try to get as much content out there and get referred to by mainstream media, because in the future it's just going to be that single media format, and we're going to be, well, forgotten. And I'd like to be remembered for a bit longer. Bryce, what do you think?
No, I think those are all good. It's going to be 2026 is when academia rules. No, I don't know. I have no idea. No, we're in shit. We're in a terrible shape now. At least in the U.S., we're not doing well. We'll see a resurgence in that.
$500 million. The Pentagon budget went up by $500 million.
And well, it should. That's important to be the strongest country. Yeah, come on. I mean, we'll need that when we invade Greenland.
They need the money yeah, exactly.
What I mean is, everything that we were talking about may actually mean nothing at all, right, in 2026.
No, but look, I think it'll finally, someone at NATO has said what I've been thinking for a long time, which is the minute the US goes and takes Greenland, they'll have to leave Europe. And there are at least, I don't know, 20, 30 bases from Eviano all the way to Ramstein that they'll have to vacate. So I don't think that's going to happen.
No, just we'll be over once the Epstein files get out. So don't worry about that. Anyway. Yeah, sure. So Krishnan, that's another show. Krishnan, thanks for being with us. Really informative, interesting topic. And really thanks for joining us today. And it's great seeing you again, mate. It's been a while, and keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My first podcast. Really happy to have had it with you guys.
That's awesome.
See you soon.
Thank you for joining us as well. Join us in a few weeks for another exciting show. And to our listeners, until then, have a great day.